The letter nearly slipped from Lena Hart's trembling fingers as the stagecoach jolted along the dusty track toward Silver Spring, Wyoming territory. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The year was 1876, and misfortune had left her family in ruins. At only 19, though she had written 25 in her letters, she was heading west to wed a man she had never laid eyes on, a cattle rancher who believed her to be older and experienced enough to help run a spread. First trip west, the kindly voice came from Clara Whitlow, an elderly woman seated across from her who offered a knowing smile. Lena tucked the letter back into her worn reticule and tried to steady herself. "Yes, ma'am. Mail order bride." Clara's eyes carried no judgment, only a quiet understanding. "You've got that mix of hope and fear written all over your face," Clara said gently, patting her hand. "I looked the same 30 years ago, leaving Boston to marry a silver miner in Colorado. Never regretted it once." Lena tried to return a smile, though hers was weak. If only her circumstances were that simple. Influenza had taken her parents' debts, had swallowed the rest, and she had only a younger brother to think of. Will was apprenticed safely with a clockmaker back east, but Lena had nothing left except the promise of marriage to Jack Coulter, a rancher who might send her packing once he learned her secret. The stage lurched over a rut, snapping her back to the present. Outside the window, the prairie gave way to pine-dotted foothills, and the purple shadow of mountains rose against a wide, blue Wyoming sky. "Silver Spring in 10 minutes, the driver hollered. Her heart hammered. Too late to turn back. She had sold everything for this passage. There was no home waiting, no other choice. She straightened her back. She had to make this work. The coach rattled into town wheels, grinding down the single dusty street. False-fronted buildings lined either side, and men in wide-brimmed hats turned to watch the passengers arrive. Lena felt their eyes as though they could see right through her fragile disguise. When the stage finally drew to a halt outside the Silver Spring Hotel, she sat frozen. "This is it, dear Clara," whispered kindly. "Your new beginning." Clutching her small valise, Lena forced herself to step down. The sun blazed so bright she had to blink to focus, only to be startled by a deep voice. "Miss Hart." She looked up. A tall man, all hard edges and sun-worn skin, stood before her. His eyes, clear, piercing blue beneath the brim of his hat, studied her with quiet disappointment. "Mr. Coulter?" She managed her voice a whisper. "Jack Coulter." He removed his hat, revealing dark hair touched with silver at the temples. Younger than she had expected, perhaps 30, though the lines on his face told of hard years. "I thought," her words faltered. "That you'd be older," he finished for her, brows drawn. Then, after a beat, he shook his head. "No, ma'am. I thought you'd look like you'd had a decent meal." He gestured at her slim frame. "Do they not feed folks back east anymore?" Relief mingled with shame. "It's been a hard year," she admitted softly. Something in his gaze eased. "Well, there's no shortage of food at the Lazy X. My housekeeper, Agnes Crowder, takes it as a personal insult if anyone leaves the table without seconds." He picked up her valise with ease. "Is this all you've brought?" "Yes. I sold most of my belongings to pay my way." "No matter." He nodded without judgment. "Wagon's out front. We'll get you settled at the ranch, let you rest up. The wedding can wait until you're ready." His kindness nearly undid her. Tears pricked her eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Coulter." "Jack," he corrected gently as he led her down the boardwalk to a sturdy wagon hitched to 2 chestnut horses. "If we're to marry, best start using my name." Lena climbed in with his help, stealing one last glance at the stagecoach that had brought her this far. The old life was gone. Ahead lay a future built on a dangerous lie, heavy as stone in her chest. The ride to the Lazy X stretched nearly 2 hours. Jack pointed out landmarks and fences, but her mind circled back to her deception. At last they crested a ridge, revealing a broad valley with a sprawling ranch tucked within. "There she is," Jack said, pride in his voice. "Not the biggest in Wyoming, but she's mine free and clear." Lena stared at the 2-story house, the barn, the cattle grazing in green pasture, the stream glinting nearby. "It's beautiful," she whispered, meaning it. Jack's mouth twitched into a small smile. "Glad you think so. Most women from back east expect something grander. I never wanted grand," Lena said quietly, only safe. For a moment their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, something that made her chest ache. As they neared the house, a stout woman bustled out apron in hand. "Agnes Crowder." Jack called. "Our guest has arrived." The housekeeper beamed, taking Lena's valise as Jack helped her down. "Welcome, Miss Hart. We've been waiting for you. You must be worn out from the road." "Thank you, Mrs. Crowder. I am rather tired," Lena admitted. "I've readied the guest room until the wedding. Supper in an hour, but I'll bring tea so you can freshen up." Jack handed over Lena's things. "Show Miss Hart her room, Agnes. I've business in the barn." With a tip of his hat, he strode away, leaving Lena to follow Agnes inside, her heart pounding with all that lay ahead. Inside, Lena Hart was startled by the comfort of the ranch house. She had braced herself for bare wood and rough cabins, yet what she saw spoke of care and a woman's touch. "His mother decorated most of this before she passed," explained Agnes Crowder as she guided Lena up the broad staircase. "He's left everything just as she arranged it." "How long has she been gone?" Lena asked softly. 5 years now," Agnes answered, her voice low. "His father followed just last year. That's when Mr. Coulter finally decided it was time to find a wife." She opened a door to reveal a tidy bedroom with a 4-poster bed and lace curtains. "Here you are. Washroom's just down the hall. I'll fetch you some tea." Left on her own, Lena sank down on the edge of the bed, her heart heavy. Jack Coulter was not what she had imagined, gentler, yes, and undeniably more handsome. And that made her secret cut even deeper. She carefully unpacked her meager things, a second dress hung in the wardrobe, a few keepsakes set neatly on the dresser. Among them, a small photograph of her parents and brother taken before sickness swept them away. She traced their faces with a fingertip and whispered, "I'm sorry. I'm doing the best I can." A knock sounded. Agnes entered with a tray, placing tea by the window. "Will you come down for supper, or should I bring it here?" Lena straightened her shoulders. "I'll come down. If this is to be my home, I should start learning it." Agnes nodded approvingly. "Mr. Coulter will like that." "He's a good man, Miss Hart. Life's taken more from him than it should, but he's solid through and through." "How did he manage to build all this?" Lena asked, sipping the strong, sweet tea. "Started with nothing," Agnes said proudly. "Came west at 16 with just grit and away with cattle. Worked every job he could until he bought his first patch of land. Built it piece by piece. Plenty of girls around here would have married him in a heartbeat, but he waited. Said he wanted a wife who chose him for himself, not the ranch." The words twisted in Lena's gut. She had chosen him for safety, not love. "I'll see you at supper," Agnes said, leaving her alone with the weight of her thoughts. That evening the meal passed quietly. Jack asked polite questions about her journey, and Lena chose her answers carefully, mindful not to let her true age slip. They ate hearty beef stew cooked by Agnes, and Lena caught herself studying him. His hands bore the marks of labor, his face weathered by wind and sun. yet his eyes revealed sharpness, and when he smiled, a warmth that softened everything. As the bowls were cleared, he leaned back. "Just so you know, I asked Reverend Silas Boone to call tomorrow. Folks in town are curious, and I figured introductions would go easier this way." Her throat tightened. More people to fool. Of course, she managed. Jack misunderstood her unease. "No need to fret. His wife Hannah is a kind soul. She'll help you find your footing here." "That's very thoughtful," Lena murmured. He only shrugged. "Just want you to feel at home." Afterward, they stepped onto the porch, watching the sky burn orange and purple over the mountains. The night breeze cooled, and Lena pulled her shawl tighter. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Jack said quietly. "Yes, I've never seen anything like it. Worth the trip." His gaze lingered on her in the fading light. "I think so," she admitted, though her honesty came with hesitation. "Fair enough." He rose. "Morning starts early on a ranch. Good night, Miss Hart." "Good night, Jack," she corrected softly. He disappeared inside, leaving Lena alone to listen to the night chorus crickets. The distant hoot of an owl, the lonely cry of a coyote. So unlike the city noises she'd always known. She wondered what Will was doing back east, and if he missed her as fiercely as she missed him. He had been against this plan from the start. "It's dishonest, Lena," he'd argued. "What happens when this rancher finds out the truth? He won't." She had insisted. "What difference does 6 years make? I can keep a household at 19 as well as 25. But now, in the shadow of Jack Coulter's honesty and decency, that difference felt vast. Morning came early indeed. Lena woke to sounds of men outside, and through her window she saw Jack among the ranch hands giving orders, checking gear. She dressed quickly in her best blue cotton dress, pinned her hair in a style meant to look mature, and made her way downstairs. "Good morning, Miss Hart," Agnes greeted cheerfully. "Sleep well?" "Very well, thank you. Mr. Coulter's already had breakfast and gone to work. He asked me to tell you Reverend Boone and his wife will be here at noon." Lena glanced at the mantel clock, just past 7. "Is there anything I can do to help?" Agnes blinked in surprise, then smiled. "Most ladies wouldn't ask, but if you're willing, I could use another pair of hands in the kitchen." For the next few hours, Lena worked beside her, learning the stubborn quirks of the wood stove and mastering Agnes's recipe for apple pie. The rhythm of baking steadied her nerves, pulling her back to memories of her mother's kitchen long before her world had come undone. When Jack Coulter stepped into the kitchen just before noon, he paused in the doorway, surprise flickering across his face. "Miss Hart, I didn't expect to find you here." Lena looked up from where she was pressing the edges of a pie crust. "I hope you don't mind. Mrs. Crowder was kind enough to show me around. Your kitchen." "Our kitchen," he corrected smoothly. Agnes Crowder gave an approving nod. "She's got a natural hand for it, Mr. Coulter. That pie's all her doing." Jack's expression shifted, something like pride settling in. "Good. A woman who isn't afraid of work will fit right in here." He cleared his throat. "The Boones have just pulled into the drive. I'll wash up and greet them." When he left, Agnes chuckled. "You've made quite an impression, Miss Hart. Not an easy thing to do." "I only baked a pie," Lena protested, though her heart warmed at the thought of Jack's approval. Lunch with Reverend Silas Boone and his wife Hannah proved far less intimidating than Lena had feared. The Reverend, a jovial man in his 50s, filled the room with laughter, while Hannah quickly took Lena under her wing. "It's mighty brave what you've done," Hannah said warmly once they were settled in the parlor. "Crossing the country to marry a stranger. Not so unusual these days," Reverend Boone chuckled. "Half the women in this territory came the same way." "Still, it takes courage," Hannah insisted. Then her eyes lit. "Now about your wedding. Have you set a date?" Jack, who had been quiet, glanced at Lena. "I figured we'd wait a few weeks. Give Miss Hart time to settle in." Lena felt a rush of gratitude. Hannah nodded. Most men would push for haste. It speaks well of you, Mr. Coulter. Then she turned back to Lena. But we should plan all the same. My sewing circle would be delighted to help with a proper dress. That's very kind, but I couldn't impose. Nonsense, Hannah said firmly. It's the highlight of our year to welcome a new bride. Her enthusiasm left no room for refusal. I'll bring them by next week, she promised. As the afternoon passed, Lena found herself drawn to the Boone's kindness. For the first time since her arrival, she felt she might carve out a place here, if only her lie didn't ruin it all. After they departed, Jack suggested a ride around the property. If you're not too tired, he added. I'd like that very much, she replied. He helped her into the wagon, and together they toured the land. He pointed out the boundary lines, the richest pastures, and the spring that never dried up pride woven through his voice. What brought you west? Lena asked, when they paused atop a hill overlooking the valley. Jack was quiet for a beat. Necessity. My father was a drunk who couldn't keep a job. By 16, I was tired of watching my mother go hungry. I read about opportunities out here, so I hopped a train and never looked back. You were so young to stand alone. He shrugged. No younger than plenty. What about you? Why does City Girl choose this life? Lena looked away, choosing her words carefully. After my parents died, choices were slim. Factory work, governess, or marriage. None sounded right until I read your advertisement. That much was true. And now, having seen it for yourself? She met his gaze steady. I believe I made the right choice. Something softened in his eyes, a warmth that caught her breath. I hope you'll still think so in a year's time. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm. Lena spent mornings learning the workings of the ranch house from Agnes, afternoons exploring the land or meeting townsfolk, and evenings on the porch with Jack watching the sun sink behind the mountains. She discovered his dry humor, his unexpected love of books, and his deep knowledge of the land. He, in turn, learned her love for music, her knack with numbers, and her determination to be useful. Never seen a woman balance ranch accounts like you, Jack remarked one evening as she finished the ledgers. My father was a bookkeeper, she said, careful not to mention she had been doing it since childhood. He taught me. Jack nodded, impressed. That skill keeps a ranch afloat more often than not. As promised, Hannah Boone returned with her sewing circle. 6 women from barely 20 to nearly 70 arrived armed with fabric and opinions. Nothing too fancy, Lena urged. Something practical I can wear again. Edith McGraw, the eldest, clucked her tongue. A wedding dress ought to be special child. Maybe something in between, suggested young Nora Pike, recently come from St. Louis. Elegant, but not wasteful. After much debate, they settled on a gown of ivory silk with clean lines, simple enough to later alter. Measurements were taken, and promises made to return in 2 weeks for a fitting. As the women worked, they shared stories of their own arrivals, their marriages, and the trials of frontier life. Lena drank in their words like water in a drought. The first year's always the roughest, Hannah confided. Men out here are more forgiving than you might expect, Edith added carefully. But honesty, Nora said firmly. Honesty is the one thing that keeps a marriage standing. The words lingered with Lena long after the sewing circle departed, a reminder of the secret that still lay heavy on her heart. Men out here know hardship better than anyone, Edith McGraw had said before leaving. But it's honesty that keeps a marriage standing, Nora Pike added, her voice steady. Out here, trust is what makes a union survive. Those words echoed in Lena Hart's mind long after the sewing circle had gone. That night, as she and Jack Coulter sat on the porch, watching the last streaks of daylight fade, she tried to summon the courage. Jack, there's something I need to tell you. His expression softened. What is it? The truth lodged in her throat. She looked at him, this man who had shown her nothing but kindness, who was offering her a home and a future, and she couldn't bear to see disappointment cloud the warmth in his eyes. I'm worried about being a good wife, she said at last, hating her cowardice. I have so much to learn about ranch life. Jack's face gentled. You're doing just fine, Lena. Better than fine. It was the first time he had spoken her given name, and the sound of it sent a flutter through her chest. Most women from the city would already be complaining about the dust and the distance, he added. I'm not most women, she replied firmly. No, he agreed, holding her gaze. You surely are not. 2 days later, disaster struck. A telegram arrived from the east. Will Hart was gravely ill with pneumonia, and his master had written that the boy kept asking for her. I have to go, Lena told Jack, her hands shaking as she clutched the paper. He's all the family I have. Jack didn't hesitate. Of course you must. I'll see you to town myself. You'll catch the eastbound stage tomorrow. The wedding can wait, family comes first, Lena. His understanding only deepened her guilt. I don't know how long I'll be gone. As long as it takes, he said firmly. Your brother needs you. The trip east was slow and torturous. 5 days of jolting coaches and endless trains, her mind full of worst-case fears. By the time she reached Philadelphia and found the clockmaker's shop, she was frantic. Relief swept through her when she saw Will recovering. The illness had been fierce, but the fever had broken. You didn't need to come all this way, he scolded gently. Jed Carver shouldn't have sent word until I was stronger. I'd never have forgiven myself if something happened, and I wasn't here, Lena whispered, clutching his hand. Over the next days, while Will regained his strength, she told him about Wyoming, the ranch, the land, the people, and Jack Coulter. Her voice softened when she spoke of him, and she caught herself smiling without meaning to. You care for him, Will observed one evening. She couldn't deny it. Yes. He's a good man, smart, hard-working, kind. And what will this good man say when he learns you lied about your age? Lena looked away. I tried to tell him before I left. I couldn't. Will's tone grew firm. You can't build a marriage on lies, Lena. What if he sends me away? Where would I go if he's the man you say he won't? He might be angry, but a man who truly cares won't cast you aside. He doesn't love me, Lena blurted. We barely know each other. Will raised a brow. Is that why you traveled 2,000 miles when you thought I was dying, because you barely know me? She had no answer. Nearly 3 weeks passed before Will was strong enough for her to leave. She sent Jack a telegram to say her brother was recovering and she would return soon, but no reply came. The silence gnawed at her. Had he changed his mind? Did he no longer want a wife? The ride back west was heavier with dread than the one that had carried her east. By the time the stage rolled into Silver Spring, she was trembling with nerves. To her astonishment, Jack was there, waiting, tall and unmistakable even at a distance. As she stepped down, he strode forward, concern etched in his face. Are you all right? You look worn out. That simple question, his first thought for her well-being instead of inconvenience, undid her. Tears sprang to her eyes. I'm fine. Will's recovering. I'm sorry I was gone so long. No matter. You're here now. He took her valise and offered his arm. Wagons this way. Agnes has supper waiting. The normalcy of his greeting steadied her. Perhaps nothing had changed after all. But as the days slipped back into routine, the right moment to confess never seemed to come. Jack was busy with ranch work, preparing for winter. Lena threw herself into helping learning to preserve the garden's bounty and aiding Agnes Crowder with canning and pickling. When the sewing circle returned for her dress fitting, the women exclaimed how the simple design suited her perfectly. A date was fixed, October 15th, 6 weeks away. "Is that agreeable?" Jack asked after Reverend Silas Boone confirmed the plan. "If you need more time?" "No," Lena interrupted quickly. "October is perfect." She could not step into marriage carrying her lie any longer. She promised herself she would tell him before the wedding. Yet September bled into October, and suddenly the day was only a week away. At night she lay awake, rehearsing the words, imagining every possible reaction. Each version ended with Jack sending her away, and the thought of losing him had become unbearable. It was Agnes Crowder who forced her hand. 3 days before the wedding, she entered Lena's room with a letter in hand. "This came for you while you were back east," she said. "With all the bustle, I forgot to pass it on." Lena Hart took the envelope, recognizing her brother's careful handwriting. She thanked Agnes Crowder and waited until the door clicked shut before opening it. Inside was a short note from Will, penned before she had even reached Philadelphia. "My dearest sister, by the time you hold this, I pray you've found the courage to tell Mr. Coulter the truth. Remember what Mother always said, a clear conscience makes for the softest pillow. I want you to be happy, Lena. Truly happy. And that can only come with honesty. Your loving brother, Will." Lena pressed the letter to her chest, tears stinging her eyes. He was right. She had to tell Jack, and it had to be before the wedding moved any further along. She found him in the barn, testing wagon harnesses for a supply trip the next day. Jack. Her voice sounded small in the cavernous space. "May I speak with you?" He glanced up, softening at the sight of her. "Of course. What's troubling you?" Lena twisted her fingers together. "Not troubling exactly, but there's something I should have told you from the start." Jack set down the harness and gave her his full attention. "Go on." She drew a deep breath. "I haven't been completely honest. In my letters I wrote that I was 25. That isn't true." His brows drew together. "Older, Lena, that doesn't matter to me." "No." She forced herself to meet his gaze. "I'm younger, 19. I'll be 20 come December." Silence stretched between them, his face unreadable. At last he asked quietly, "Then why lie?" "Your advertisement asked for a woman at least 25, someone mature, capable. After my parents died, the debts swallowed everything. I sold what little we had to secure Will's apprenticeship and buy my passage west. I couldn't afford the risk of being turned away." Jack dragged a hand through his hair. "So you lied." "Yes." Tears blurred her vision. "I wanted to tell you when I first arrived, but I was terrified. Terrified you'd send me off. Later. Terrified of losing all of this. Losing what he asked gently. This ranch. Agnes and the life I've begun to picture here, and..." Her voice faltered. "You." He studied her for a long, heavy moment. 6 years is a difference, Lena. But not in the way you fear. I'm not angry that you're younger. I'm troubled that you felt forced to lie, that you've carried this burden in silence. A flicker of hope lit in her chest. "You're not sending me away." He looked almost surprised. "Is that what you thought, Lena? I've grown to care for you these past months. Your age doesn't change your courage, your determination, your kindness." "But I deceived you," she whispered. "Yes," he said seriously, "and we'll need to reckon with that. Trust matters in marriage. I need to know you'll speak truth even when it's hard." Marriage. He still wanted marriage. Relief nearly buckled her knees. "I promise," she said fervently. "No more lies, Jack. Not ever." "Good," he said, nodding. Is there anything else I should know? Any other secrets? She shook her head. No, only this. Then we've still got a wedding to plan. He extended his hand. Unless you've changed your mind. No, she said quickly. If you'll still have me, I want to be your wife. His fingers closed firmly around hers. Out here, age is just a number. What matters is the life we build, the moments we choose together. He hesitated, something vulnerable flickering in his eyes. I've grown fond of our evenings on the porch. The quiet confession warmed her more than any grand speech. So have I. They walked back to the house hand in hand, the weight of deception finally lifted. That evening they sat on the porch again, the silence between them easy and sure. Why 25? Jack asked suddenly. Why not 21 or 22? Lena smiled ruefully. Because your advertisement was so exact, a mature woman of at least 25 with experience running a household. I wanted to be certain you'd consider me. He chuckled. I was trying to scare off giggling girls who thought ranch life was some sort of adventure tale. I needed a real partner. And that isn't me, she teased. You're the most practical 19-year-old I've ever met, he admitted. Maybe too practical. I haven't seen you do a single thing just for the joy of it since you arrived. The words startled her. When had she last done something purely for pleasure? Certainly not after her parents died. Maybe not even before, when responsibility had already been pressing on her young shoulders. I don't know how, she said softly. Jack rose from his chair. Come with me. Curious, she followed him down the porch steps to the corral. He opened the gate and gave a low whistle. A golden Palomino mare trotted over, ears flicking. This is Sunny, Jack said, stroking the mare's muzzle. Gentle as they come. I thought she might be yours if you'd like to learn to ride. Lena stared in wonder. Mine, but I don't know how. I'll teach you. He guided her hand to the horse's velvet soft nose. Every rancher's wife ought to know her way around a horse. The Palomino mare's warm breath tickled Lena Hart's palm, and something tight inside her chest eased. When can we start? She asked, her voice filled with wonder. Jack Coulter's smile reached his eyes. Tomorrow, if you'd like. I'd like that very much. True to his word, the next morning, Jack led her out after breakfast. Sunny was waiting in the corral, already saddled. We'll take it slow, he promised, showing Lena how to approach the horse, how to hold the reins, how to swing herself into the saddle without spooking the animal. At first she felt awkward, clumsy atop the mare, but Jack's steady patience eased her fear. By midday, she was circling the corral, unassisted, pride glowing in her heart. You're a natural, Jack called from where he leaned against the fence. I doubt that Lena laughed, but I'm enjoying it. That's what counts. He opened the gate and led her out for a slow ride around the ranch yard. Jack rode his stallion River, while she guided Sunny beside him. The steady rhythm of hooves, the autumn sun warming her shoulders, the open sky stretching forever. Lena hadn't felt this free in years. Thank you, she said softly as they returned to the corral. I didn't realize how much I needed this. Jack steadied her as she dismounted, his hands lingering at her waist. There's more to life than work, Lena, even out here. Her breath caught as they stood there, close enough to feel the warmth of each other. Slowly, Jack lowered his head and brushed his lips over hers. The kiss was gentle, searching. Lena hesitated only a moment before her hands rested against his chest and she kissed him back. When they broke apart, both were breathless. I've wanted to do that for weeks, Jack admitted, voice roughened. Why wait? She teased. Didn't seem proper before the wedding. His smile was faint, but sincere. I've been trying to be a gentleman. Very admirable, she whispered, laughing softly. He tucked a loose curl behind her ear, his touch sending a shiver down her spine. 2 more days, he murmured. Then you'll be my wife. Lena leaned into his hand, her fear of the future fading. The wedding dawned crisp and golden, the aspens on the hills blazing yellow. In the room that had been hers for months, Lena sat still as Hannah Boone, and the women of the sewing circle laced her into her gown. The ivory silk was even lovelier than she had imagined. Simple, elegant pearl buttons glinting down the back lace, tracing her collar and cuffs. "You look lovely," my dear Edith McGraw said, fixing Lena's curls into a proper bridal style. The word young no longer carried the weight of shame. Jack knew the truth, and had accepted her as she was. Nervous Hannah asked, tucking late-blooming wildflowers into Lena's dark hair. A little, Lena admitted, but mostly excited. As it should be. Hannah smiled. "Now we best not keep your groom waiting." Downstairs, the parlor had been transformed with flowers and chairs lined into an aisle. At the far end, Reverend Silas Boone stood with Bible in hand, and beside him Jack Coulter. He wore a well-cut suit, his dark hair neatly combed, but it was the look in his eyes when Lena appeared that stole her breath, wonder, admiration, and something deeper. The ceremony passed in a haze. She felt the Reverend's voice, Jack's steady hand holding hers, the weight of the gold band, as it slid onto her finger. Then Reverend Boone declared them husband and wife, and Jack kissed her a gentle, reverent kiss that promised a lifetime. The celebration that followed filled the house with laughter and well-wishes. Neighbors crowded in, bringing food and gifts. As the sun dipped low, Jack found Lena by the refreshment table. "Ready to slip away," he murmured. She nodded shyly. They had planned this. Agnes Crowder would stay with her sister in town, leaving the newlyweds their first night alone. After accepting last congratulations, they rode back to the quiet ranch house that was now truly hers. Jack led her upstairs, not to the guest room she had occupied, but to the master bedroom at the end of the hall. "I had Agnes move your things," he said, pushing the door open. The room was spacious, anchored by a tall 4-poster bed. A fire glowed in the hearth, casting warmth over polished wood. "It's beautiful," Lena whispered. "My mother decorated it," Jack told her. "But it's yours now. Change whatever you like." "I wouldn't change a thing," she said, meaning it. The room felt right, felt like home, in a way she hadn't known since her parents' passing. Jack came to stand behind her, his hands warm on her shoulders. "Are you happy, Lena?" he asked softly. She turned to face him, touching his cheek. "Yes, happier than I ever thought possible." His eyes darkened. "I want to make you happy every day of our lives. You already do." She rose on her toes to kiss him, no longer uncertain. Jack's arms wrapped around her, pulling her close as the kiss deepened. When they finally drew apart, both were breathless. "My wife," he said in wonder. "My husband?" She answered the word, a vow. Later, lying tangled in the sheets with her head on his chest, Lena felt a peace she had never known. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines, a coyote calling somewhere in the distance. "What are you thinking?" Jack asked, tracing lazy circles on her bare shoulder. "That I'm glad I came west," she said honestly. "Even with the fear, even with the lies. I can't imagine being anywhere but here with you." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "And I can't imagine anyone else by my side. I know our marriage started in an unusual way, Lena, but I need you to know something. I'm falling in love with you. Not with the woman I thought I was getting, but with the woman you truly are." Tears filled her eyes at his words. "I love you too," Lena Hart whispered, her voice catching. "I think I have for weeks now." Jack Coulter's arms pulled her closer, his voice rough with feeling. Then we're both blessed indeed. The months that followed tested them in ways neither had expected. Winter came early to the high country, driving blizzards across the land and leaving them snowbound for days. Cattle took sick, and Jack and his hands worked night and day to keep the herd alive. What had seemed charming isolation in autumn felt heavy beneath January's gray skies, but there were blessings too. Evenings by the fire, Jack's deep voice carrying tales from his worn books. Mornings waking in his arms, safe in the knowledge of his love. The steady confidence Lena gained as she shouldered more responsibility, giving Jack room to pursue his plans to expand the ranch. By spring, they had settled into a rhythm that felt like true partnership. When the snow finally melted and wildflowers spread across the hills, Jack suggested a picnic. Lena, now at ease in the saddle, rode Sonny beside him until they reached a meadow high above the ranch, where a glassy lake mirrored the sky. "It's beautiful here," Lena said, as they spread a blanket beneath a cottonwood. "My father brought me here when I was a boy," Jack told her, unpacking the basket Agnes Crowder had prepared. Said it was the finest spot in all Wyoming territory. I think he was right. They ate slowly, talking about summer plans, new cattle. Jack meant to buy the vegetable garden Lena had expanded. Afterward, they stretched out on the blanket, watching clouds drift. "I have something to tell you," Lena said, after a long silence. Jack turned his head, eyes curious. "Another secret," he teased. She shook her head, smiling, and placed his hand on her still flat stomach. A surprise. Comprehension dawned. "Lena, are you saying—" "Yes." Her smile widened. "Come November, it won't be just the two of us anymore." Joy lit his face. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her hair. "A baby. Our baby." "Are you happy?" she asked, though his expression already answered. "More than I can say." His gaze grew worried. "How are you feeling? Should we head back? Do you need to rest?" "I'm fine." Lena laughed, brushing his cheek. "Women have been doing this since the beginning of time. I don't need coddling." "Humor me," he said, kissing her palm. "It's my first time being a father." The months of her pregnancy passed swiftly. Jack was attentive without being overbearing, and the women of Silver Spring rallied around her, sharing advice and helping her prepare. Agnes especially fussed over her meals and already planned dishes to build Lena's strength after the birth. As her body changed, Lena thought often of her journey from the desperate girl who lied about her age to the wife who had confessed to the woman who found love in the unlikeliest place. "No regrets?" Jack asked one evening on the porch, his hand resting protectively over her rounded belly. "None," she said softly. "Except maybe not telling you the truth sooner." He shook his head. "Things worked out as they should. If you'd told me right away, I might have handled it differently. We needed time to know each other first." She teased him gently. "Wise words from a simple rancher. I have my moments." He kissed her temple. "Besides, I've learned a thing or two from my wife, such as, that love doesn't count years," he said, voice low. "Only moments. And we've had some mighty fine ones, Mrs. Coulter." She leaned against him, content. With plenty more ahead. On a snow-dusted November morning, after hours of grueling labor, their daughter was born. They named her Charlotte after Jack's mother, but everyone called her Maggie, a sturdy name for a frontier child. "She's perfect," Jack whispered, cradling the tiny bundle, awe in his eyes. "Beautiful, just like her mama." Lena, exhausted but triumphant, watched them. This was her family now, the man who had forgiven her, lies the child with his blue eyes and her dark hair, and the home they had built together. 5 years later, Lena sat on the porch of the now expanded ranch house, Jack at her side, watching Maggie race her younger brother Ben across the yard. The ranch had flourished under their care, growing into one of the largest in the territory. They had endured droughts, blizzards, rustlers, and lean years, but always together. "Penny? For your thoughts," Jack said, reaching for her hand. She smiled, twining her fingers with his. "I was thinking about that advertisement you placed, seeking a woman of 25. He chuckled. "Best mistake I ever made. And I was thinking of what you said on our wedding night, that love doesn't count years, only moments. You were right," she added softly. He squeezed her hand. "We've had some good ones, and many more to come." They watched as Maggie helped Ben up after a tumble, the sun setting over the Wyoming mountains in a blaze of color, just as it had that first evening Lena arrived at the Lazy X. Below, cattle grazed peacefully, the barn and outbuildings stood solid against the darkening sky. On that porch, a family born of one desperate lie, but built on truth and love, looked toward the future, counting not the years, but the moments of a life well lived. If this story has touched your heart, I invite you to stay with us to discover more true tales of the Wild West. Stories that honor resilience, tenderness, and the spirit that God placed in those who blazed the trail. Subscribe, share. Leave your thoughts in the comments, and join us once again to journey across this untamed land. Thank you.